Diego. Welcome, relatives. Thank you for attending today. I would like to open our event this afternoon with remarks from our sponsor, the president of Sinclair, Dr. Steve Johnson. Welcome.
Thanks for being here at Sinclair. It's great to see you all. Thanks for letting us sponsor. Thank you for having Sinclair be your place. Place matters. Place matters a lot. And thanks for having Sinclair be the place for this celebration. And it's important to mark this day that helps all of us remember and come into alignment with the facts and the effects of our history. And so that's, and we at Sinclair Community College are way into that. So thank you for helping us fulfill our mission by doing that. I want to thank my colleagues from Sinclair too that have worked to put this on and who are here today, and community leaders who are here. Thank you for helping us mark this. And just goodness, everyone. This is just about goodness and doing the right thing in the right way. So if there's anything that we can do, we're here. My office is, I don't know if you know, my office is like right up there. And I have to run back up there for a few minutes. So I will be right there. But if you need anything from us to make this work out in any way, please let us know. And Stephanie, thank you so much for letting me say good afternoon to everyone. And again, thank you.
I would also like to add a special thank you to Dayton Metro Library for co-sponsoring the event with Sinclair. Both of these community organizations have brought education, advocacy, learning, culture, community. They represent the very heart of Dayton and are home for a safe place of learning and institutions for equity, advocacy, all of the things that we're going to be talking about today for REACH. I would like to introduce the Honorable Judge Walter H. Rice, who has been my partner in the beginning of all of this. I would like to just share for a moment before the judge comes up my gratitude of how he will explain the story of how we connected and how we found each other, along with Robert Kinzess, who is the film for NBCC. So he is in the back in between times and after to do interviews. We are going to create a documentary about how we got here today and the road that it took to get to the first Indigenous Peoples Day in Dayton. And the speakers that we have, especially our Legacy Award winner, you will see that none of this is possible without him. So without further ado, Judge Walter H. Rice.
I want to thank several people for sponsoring this event and making certain that it occurred. Of course, Sinclair and the Dayton Metro Library, probably two of our most valuable entities in the greater Dayton community. I want to thank Stephanie Van Hoos, who has performed a miracle in creating this event in a short period of time. Robert Kinzess was of incredible value to her and all of the committee that worked so hard to make this happen. When I was young, shortly after the American Civil War, my favorite subject in high school and college was history. And I have often regretted that I never pursued the study of history and became a teacher, or to the extent my abilities permitted, an author of historical subjects. But it dawned on me about 30, 40 years ago that the version of history I was taught and that we were all taught, those of my generation and a generation afterwards, cheated us out of a full knowledge of American history. We learned a white, Eurocentric version of American history, which totally ignored the contributions to our country of so many, many people, those who immigrated here and those who were here long before the white European arrived. I became involved very peripherally about 10 years ago when I was asked to participate in a Memorial Day ceremony honoring Native Americans who had fought so bravely in every war this country has ever fought. And because of that participation, I learned and was fortunate to get to know some of the people who organized that ceremony. Learned a little bit, not enough, about their culture and their contributions to American history. Unfortunately, today, we have people in this country who would, and I'll use the term, whitewash our history. They don't want us to know anything that might shed any doubt on our version of America as an absolutely pristine, no-fault community of peoples. Well, I'm not here to debate them, but I don't see how we can determine where we're going as a people unless we first know where we came from. So the Memorial Day ceremony lasted about 4 or 5 years. The founder of it passed away and unfortunately left no notes behind as to the participants. So for several years, this community was without a Memorial Day celebration. I reached out to Robert Kinsis, one of our community's most valuable citizens, to see if we could revive that Memorial Day celebration. He introduced me to Stephanie, a human dynamo, frankly, and this gathering today is the result. The first annual, but certainly not the last, Indigenous Peoples Day. One of the good things that has come from a tremendous tragedy that occurred during the summer of 2020 when George Floyd was killed by police in Minneapolis, and all of the racial tension that occurred during that entire summer, and frankly that continues today, was that it began to dawn on people that this is just not a white man's or a white woman's country, that other groups who have made this country great have not yet been fully invited to sit at the table when decisions are being made to benefit the community as a whole. Whether it's people whose history has been suppressed or not allowed to flourish and be taught, whether it's persons living in poverty, persons of color, persons of different ethnic origins or religions, or indigenous people. Those men and women, those cultures do not yet have a full seat at the table. And the vision of bringing everyone together to make the future of this country as bright as the ideals on which it was founded, albeit not yet reached. Groups began to get together to talk about ways that all of us could have in this country what we truly do not yet have, and that is a quality of opportunity. Not opportunity in the sense of a quality of results, but a quality of opportunity so that my grandchildren, your children or grandchildren will reach the starting line of life with an equal opportunity to succeed based on their strength of their character, not by virtue of an accident of birth, which often determines a person's success, role in life. We have learned over the years, and I'm speaking in a general sense, to live together, to work together, to go to school together. We have not yet learned to know each other. We are no further along the road to getting to know each other than we were 50 or 60 years ago when we prided ourselves with finally delivering civil rights and civil liberties to everyone. We must get to know each other. You know, my perspectives, my viewpoints are based on my life's experiences and what I continue to learn. I dare say the same is true of you. If we know each other's life's experiences, then there is no problem that we cannot solve. If you and I are sitting down to work on a community problem, or for that matter, if we're just sitting down to talk, hoping maybe our acquaintanceship will ripen into a true friendship, I will soon know where you're coming from, because you're going to tell me. What I will not know is why you're coming from that perspective. And if I don't know the why behind your perspective based on your life's experiences, and if the person I'm talking with doesn't know the why behind my life's experiences or my perspectives, we're simply going to be talking onto the 25th century on parallel tracks. We're never going to be able to truly connect, to know one another, and to march forward, not separately as we have in this country ever since its beginning, but as a united country. So the beauty of events like this is we bring peoples together from all walks of life, but it isn't enough, because out of meetings and programs such as this, we need to together find ways to share our life's experiences so we truly get to know one another. Unfortunately, and I am certainly not proud to admit this, my initial observations of Indigenous people were shaped by the one-sided version of history that I was taught. I've tried to get a larger perspective, a true version of history, by reading, but it isn't enough. We need to promote events where we will share our life's experiences, and by sharing our life's experiences, we will know not only where each other is coming from, but why we are coming from that position. And if we truly get to know one another, then there is absolutely nothing that can stop us, that can stop this country from realizing its not yet realized ideals. So thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm already thinking about next year, and thank you all for being here at our first, but not last, Indigenous People Day. My next task is to introduce someone who probably is as responsible for this event as any of those I have previously mentioned. You've always heard that behind every good man, there's a good woman. That's true, but that's a stereotype because today we can acknowledge that behind every good woman is a good and supportive male. That's certainly true in the case of the woman who brought this event together, Ms. Stephanie Van Hoos. I understand that this good man is here. It's her husband, Joe Van Hoos, who can introduce her far, far better than can I. Joe?
Thank you, Judge Rice. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Van Hoos, and I ask that you bear with me because I found out about 10 minutes ago that I have a speaking part. So, I'm very honored and privileged and proud to be able to introduce my lovely wife, Stephanie. And I could take the canned approach and read from a biography, but I would prefer to take a more personal note. I mean, aside from the fact that she's a proud native of Buffalo, New York, that she's a proud veteran of the United States Air Force, and a proud citizen of Mohawk, Bay of Quinte. I would like to take you back in time a little bit to kind of explain her journey, how she got here. And hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder. But what I'm about to say, please don't groan, but I'm going to take you back to October 1995. And there's a young senior airman Schreckengast, Stephanie, and a senior airman Van Hoos, myself. We're talking October 95. And by this time I know that she's a proud Mohawk woman. I know that she is very much loving to share her culture. And she says to me, Joe, my people have no representation here. Native American Heritage Month is coming up next month, and the base is literally doing nothing. So what I'm about to tell you is going to, for those who had a part in this, you're going to see some similarities. So we're a month out. So we head over to Public Affairs, and they tell her, hey, you need a charter, you need bylaws, you need to start this organization. It doesn't exist on base. So in this month's time, she gets a charter together. She starts the first ever Native American Heritage Committee. And she puts on this powwow educational event that is the first ever in that area. And, we started it with 2 dancers, one of which was a proud Cherokee citizen, prominent elder, 4 vendors, and 2 boxes of donuts. That was the limit of our resources. Two very young airmen. So she pulls this off. We have the school come in on base, and it turns into this great educational event. And it becomes quickly the talk of the town. So, this is something she's done in a very short period of time. Fast forward a little bit, 1996, 97, we're married. We have our first born, and we start our Air Force journey together. She's decided to separate. We start our Air Force journey together, and we start moving all over the country, all over the world. But what Stephanie decided to do with that time, it's very tough for a military spouse. She decides she's going to make a difference in every community we move to. And she decides to start teaching in Florida. She starts her education path in Florida. She starts working her way into classrooms and starts sharing her culture and other perspectives of Native nations on American history. Then we moved to Belgium. She decides, you know what? In addition to just teaching in the classrooms, I want to become a softball coach. So she starts coaching the Belgian national Little League team, which in Belgium is an international team. So now she's sharing her culture with people all over the world. Fast forward, we moved to DC, does the same thing, comes here. And we come to a point here where I come from a family of educators myself. And she's in my aunt's classroom, and she's in my cousin's classroom. And she realizes, Joe, I'm not going to be able to make the kind of difference I want to make one classroom at a time. And even if I did, it's going to be 10, 15 years before I see it. I want to do something bigger. So she starts reaching out to her network of friends, eventually comes around to Judge Rice, and it was what was going to be a veterans event has now become this great event that we're here today, all to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, the first ever here. And I think that Stephanie is a great example of what a person can achieve with vision, grit, will, hard work, and perseverance. And with no further delay, I don't want to take too much more of your time, I want to take this opportunity to introduce my beautiful wife, Stephanie Van Hoos, to all of you.
I want to do the land acknowledgement and relatives call first. So I think it's important that we honor and acknowledge the land that we're on today. And I had asked a special person, to me, a wonderful, amazing human being. Jill Krieg is an archaeologist, and she works for the Dayton Society of Natural History. She specializes in interpretive exhibition design, collections management, all of it. I want to say personally about Jill. When Donna Milam and I went to Sunwatch, I had just come back from Walt Disney World. It was like a vacation we'd been waiting years for to take. And I looked around Sunwatch and I saw what it could be. I saw what it was. I could feel the land. I could feel the ancestors. I could feel a sadness there. There is a sadness. There was a sadness there. And when I had the opportunity to meet Jill and the staff, and I call them the women of Sunwatch, I saw the heart and soul that was, and the will to pour into the programs, and the need for the grant funding, and the need for Boonshaft support from the community, support, and their fundraising was vast. Jill stays the course. She stays the course. And I told her, I said, it's emotional for me when somebody else speaks for us. When somebody else speaks for our people, speaks for our ancestors. That's not our culture, that's not our heritage. And when there's no places for us to speak. And Jill opened up and connected us and the entire community. She's reached out, her team has reached out. And what I told Jill was, no matter how long you're working there, to stand tall in the truth of what you're sharing. Stand strong in the vision of what the ancestors wanted for that land. That was home to families and babies. There are children buried there. And it's more important now than ever for historical sites like Sunwatch to make sure we take time to honor those ancestors that are buried there, the families that live there. It's hard, I believe, to interpret. There's a responsibility that you are given when you interpret Indigenous lands, when you interpret for the ancestors that were there. It is no small task, and I've said this over and again. We just had a very beautiful evening at Sunwatch this past weekend for the harvest dinner. And it was wonderful being there. It was wonderful being there for the harvest. It was wonderful experiencing the prayers and listening to Guy speak. It's that type of organization. It's that type of organization and community connection that the CEO, Tracy, and the new COO, Chad, are bringing, are reaching out. It's uncomfortable sometimes when there's conflict. It's uncomfortable when you have different views. It's uncomfortable when you don't know what to do or you don't know how to acknowledge. And that's okay. I want to say it's okay to be uncomfortable. What I encourage everybody is to just stay in that, lean in, hang on. So like, stay with me, talk to me. We can get frustrated or feelings hurt. But it's not okay to do nothing. And it's one of the things that I have known and appreciated about all the gentlemen speaking today and the women. They have stopped at nothing to bring in advocacy, to bring in the Indigenous voice, to hear from different tribes. When we have the mayor come to do our proclamation, I would like to do a relatives call. And this is my call. There is a continuum of Indigenous identity, from tribal citizens whose parents are both Indigenous to descendancy. And sometimes there is, in between citizens and descendants, there can be hurt and pain and grief because we are measured, because we have to fight for our rights to be recognized. It's difficult, and it can be demoralizing and dehumanizing. We are in Ohio when I moved here in 2010. When I looked at the materials in the school system, out of every other place I taught, I was the most upset about what I saw here. They were giving me like minstrelized cartoons. And then my oldest son, Ty Denega, we were in base housing. He went to Stebbins High School. And, we went through the whole gamut of mascots and behavior and treatment. And he's named after my great-grandfather, Chief Joseph Brandt, whose Mohawk name is Ty Denega. And I gave him that name because when we were in Little Rock, Arkansas, there was no identity for us. We worked hard to partner with Oklahoma because there was nothing for us there. It really was segregation in the South in 91 when I got there. It was only black and white. And the men in my unit said, "You should be white. You look white, you should be white." And I said, "No, my mother is Mohawk. We follow the matrilineal side. I don't, you can't erase who I am." It was really frustrating and hard. So when we say we went to get a charter, I went immediately to the African American Heritage Committee. They were my partners. They were my support. They were my encouragement and beginning. And then people in the community who were descendants, who felt they had no right to say they were Native American, helped me. And that's what I want to say in our relatives call today. I would not be here if it was not for my mother and my grandmother and my grandfather and my father. And I would not be in my advocacy work in the 90s if it were not for descendants helping connect me to Thomas Muskrat, the elder. Those moments changed my life. When we went into the schools, the kids, it was my first time teaching young children, and I had all of the things out, and Thomas talked about the etiquette of powwow. And they asked me, and I was very proud. I said, "I'm Turtle Clan. That's my family. I'm Turtle Clan." And I will tell you, it hurt my soul when one of the younger children had a look of, like, just deadpan. And he said, "What do you mean? Klan?" He's like Ku Klux Klan? And I said, "No, honey, no, no." And so I had explained to him what a new word and a new meaning for Klan was family. It was our family. It was our medicine. And Thomas was there and he smiled. And a lot of people gave me a hard time. A lot of people gave me a hard time on the base. They didn't really, there was a success for my husband's unit, but no support for mine. And I mention that because as women, we often face obstacles that are sometimes demoralizing. And there's something in us that has to say, we have to keep going. We can't stop. We have to keep going. And I always appreciate Thomas and the descendants in that area for closing that gap for me, for bringing in support and showing that first event that we held, you know. In this event, I just had my 21st surgery in the end of July. And it took me a lot longer to recover this time. I've had what we don't say, I don't like to talk about, but I've had 2 cancers, a stroke, a blood clot, and a lot of my friends here have willed me, prayed for me to be here today. And the power of our family's medicine is strong. I spent most of my last 10, 15 years in ceremony, bringing ceremony back to my family. And it's something that I shared with some of my sisters because my grandmother was sent to residential school in New York. They took my great-grandmother's children and they were gone for years. I became a Montgomery County CASA in 2018, and I was still dealing with health issues, but I took the Supreme Court's training of ICWA. And then I really realized and understood the injustice that was served, the injustice that occurred to my great-grandmother. And it hurt my soul. And then I heard Guy talk, and we had a side conversation about children in the system here needing support and how the ICWA Center lost funding. And so, once again, there are kids not represented, like my grandmother. And as a CASA, again, these are emotional points for us. The culture, our cultures, our voices are beautiful. They're beautiful. We are resilient. You see those the t-shirts, strong, resilient, Indigenous. If you knew there's a saying, if you knew how much violence it took to be this peaceful, I truly understand that. My mother understands that. Many of us understand that. And I think I share that today because I want you to understand why reach is so important, why our reach to our families, to our communities, to our cultures is vital, is necessary for all of us to stay together, to not separate, to not divide. I went to Pride. I'm a free mom hug mom. I love doing that. And went to Pride to represent my son and to hug kids who will never get hugged. And I met Erica Fields, and I went around, I just started talking to everybody. I said, I really want to bring Indigenous Peoples Day here. And they're like, yes, it's time, we're ready, we're going. And, just talking to her connected me to the Human Rights Committee. Dayton wants to become a city of human rights. And that connected me to the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, the Subcommittee on Equity, where I met Fabrice. Fabrice did minority public health. And it was the first time, it was during COVID, it was the first time he actually had an Indigenous panel, and I was so excited. A friend reached out to me and said, "You have to see this." I have never seen or heard about anything in this area for my health, my children's health, my family's health, any of the health of my Cayuga sisters, Lakota families, all of the other, I've never heard of that. And going through my own struggles, I think it would have been wonderful. So when Fabrice brought this panel together, he connected me to the outside community. And I didn't feel alone. And I think the agencies, you underestimate your importance in the part of bonding and bringing community together. Don't underestimate your voice. Our connections to each other is what I shared at Pride. I said, it's wonderful for us to celebrate. It's exactly what the judge was saying. I said, it's wonderful for us to celebrate, but I really want to take this farther. We need to show up to each other's events, to hear the stories, to understand each other, to understand how we got here and what makes you whole. So I want to thank you for taking the time and saying yes to be here, saying yes at such short notice to come here, to pull it all together, to fly in. We've had people fly in. Our speakers have flown in from many different places, and then you're going to hear from local heroes in my heart, local heroes that I have discovered that have created spaces and places for the entire community of Dayton. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen. I am going to introduce our next speaker.
I'm honored to be here on behalf of my colleagues, Garrett Fairchild, Shanice Turner-Sloss, Matt Joseph, and Chris Shaw, my fellow commissioners. It's an honor to be here representing them as well as the 141,000 people that we have in the city of Dayton. Also, I was a little bit late because I was in another session earlier with the Rotary Group, and I was the keynote speaker, and addressing that and answering a few questions was something that I thought was necessary for them as well. But I also want to bring to you the attention and the honor that we give to Indigenous people. And it's a proclamation that I have that's written by the Dayton City Commissioners. Whereas the city of Dayton recognizes that the lands that would become known as the Americas were inhabited, cultivated, cared for in sacred harmony by Indigenous people since the immemorial time. And whereas the city recognizes that these land where the city was founded upon were the great waterways of the Great Miami River, the Mad River, the Stillwater River, Wolf Creek, and Twin Creek emerge, or I should say converge, were inhabited, cultivated, and cared for in sacred harmony by Indigenous people, again, since the time has started. Whereas the city of Dayton recognizes that the responsibility of city leaders to preserve and also to protect known historical sites of Indigenous villages, burial grounds, mounds, and other areas that are very sacred in trust, and that these Indigenous sites should be cared for in that realm. Whereas the city also recognizes the value of education, integrity, and also understanding and how you tell the story of our foundation, and acknowledges the past sacrifices of all Native Americans throughout this nation, and encourages educational agencies and institutions to also consider expanding this coverage in these areas as well, as was mentioned earlier. And whereas the city also observes Indigenous people, Indigenous Peoples Day, for the first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of the Native American nations to the United Nations. It was sponsored by International Conference on the Discrimination Against Indigenous People in the Americas. And whereas now, the city of Dayton, in the spirit of reconciliation, proclaims the second Monday of each October to be Indigenous Peoples Day in Dayton, and invites businesses, organizations, and public entities also to join us in recognition and appreciation for this work. Now, I therefore, Mayor Jeff Mims, Mayor of the great city of Dayton, Ohio, do hereby proclaim, which I believe is going to be October the 15th, 2022, as Indigenous Peoples Day here in Dayton, Ohio. Thank you so much.
So Stephanie asked me to do a land acknowledgement. So a land acknowledgement is a statement that recognizes Indigenous people as the traditional stewards of this land and honors the enduring relationship between Indigenous people and their territories. I have been asked many times over the years to write a land acknowledgement for Dayton. And to be very honest with you, I have spent a lot of time thinking about this, and it's very, very difficult for me to do this. I am not a Native American person, and in my opinion, land acknowledgements must be written in consultation with tribal representation. Land acknowledgements are living statements, and they are rooted in the present for all of us non-Native people to acknowledge that we live in a colonized country and the colonization is still happening. What I can tell you is people have lived in Ohio for over 10,000 years. They came here during the Ice Age. We do not know what these people called themselves. In the textbooks, we refer to them as the Paleo-Indians, and they lived with the great megafauna. They hunted mammoths and mastodons. Their lifestyle changed dramatically, and we transitioned into the Archaic period at about 8,000 BC, and this period goes on for about 6,000 years. The people were doing the same type of behaviors at the end of the Ice Age into the Archaic, until about 3,000 years ago, we shift into what we call the Woodland period. And in the Woodland period, we get some of Ohio's famous cultural groups, our famous ancestors, the Adena and the Hopewell. The Adena and the Hopewell built magnificent earthen complexes. They brought exotic materials into Ohio from all over the country and created a culture that's soon to be recognized on the world stage as part of the World Heritage Network, which is a huge thing. Then, as I like to say, corn changed everything, and people stopped doing this type of behavior and they move into living in villages and farming corn. And that's where we have the Fort Ancient people who lived in places like Sunwatch. So, Indigenous people of Ohio and all over, after this time, had their lives greatly changed by European contact. They were confronted with diseases which led to many deaths because people had no natural immunities. Trading posts were built in their territories, missionaries tried to convert them to Christianity, and genocide ravaged them both physically and spiritually. Europeans made their way into Ohio fairly late compared to other regions. Reliable depictions of the Ohio Valley do not appear until the mid-1700s, so it's difficult to say who are the descendant people of the Hopewell, the Adena, and the Fort Ancient, right? Is it the same as the people who were living here in the mid-1700s? I do not have that answer for you. I cannot tell you that. I can tell you European settlers fought continuously for the rich and fertile lands of Ohio, By the end of the War of 1812, most of the Native people were defeated, both militarily and spiritually. Some were forced to move westward, and a few remained in defiance. In 1930, the U.S. Congress enacted the Indian Removal Act, which forced the remaining Native people, including the people in the Northwest Territory in Ohio, to move west of the Mississippi into designated lands or reservations. Looking back, there's a long list of tribes that have historic ties to Ohio, including the Shawnee, the Miami, the Delaware, the Potawatomi, the Ottawa, the Peoria, the Sinawa, the Chippewa, the Wyandot, and this is not an exhaustive list. There are many, many tribes. So with all of this information I've given you, how do you write a land acknowledgement? I cannot tell you how to do that. What I can do is tell you from myself that I personally would like to say thank you to Native American people who have lived here, people who live here currently and call Ohio home. I honor you with gratitude for protecting this land for generations to come. I celebrate your resilience and strength, and I commit to continue to protect this land with you in the future. So thank you.
I'd like to take this moment to introduce Robert Mullinex. As we do our relative call, I would like all of our Indigenous relatives to come forward, please, and be seen, stand, and be heard. We're going to do a photo with the proclamation held by Guy Jones. So Robert is going to do a song as we gather together in the front of the podium for a photo.
Hello, my name is Autumn, and I am Daigo Ono, which in English is Cayuga. And I'm so honored to be here today, and I'm so honored to be asked to come up and speak my language and let you know who I am. And I'm honored to be here to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for having me come up here. Nyawe go.
If you look up on these beautiful screens, I am proud to introduce our next presenter. I met Kathy Arnett a few months ago. Actually, it's been longer than a few months. In the spring, I think. Yeah. We were working with Sunwatch to do a dinner, an evening at Sunwatch, and Kathy was a huge supporter. I was able to speak to their group, and actually learn through a network of friends about Kathy's work. When we talk about water protectors, she is water. She is water protection. She is the definition of education and advocacy, of ceremony and healing. I put Kathy's family on her, of Cherokee descent. And I think it's important to say that she is of Cherokee descent, and also note that this is something that we were in a season of, the R in reach. Reconciliation, repatriation, reclamation. Reclamation. Reclaiming, feeling that you have the right to honor your Indigenous heritage. It's tough. She shared some things that were pretty upsetting for her and me to hear them when she said that she was Cherokee. And it goes back to descent. And I say to thee, somebody tells you they are of this descent, and this is their grandparent. There are many reasons why you're not counted. Don't take away somebody's heritage. You're taking away their ancestor, their family. Every single person in this room is made whole by the generations of their ancestors. So when you look around, who would you not count? Who would you not count? So I say, no, we're going to count. Everybody gets counted today. I count you. I see you. Step into the acknowledgement of your heritage and your ancestry. Kathy has been in multiple environmental roles. She's a senior hydrogeologist. There's a long, long bio for her. 37 years in water protection, 37 years mapping aquifers in Dayton. So we're really excited when she said yes. I feel like this is yes to the dress type of thing. We were really excited when Kathy said yes to speaking, because we're also creating, in partnership with Dayton Metro Library, 2 events. One is Women's Medicine Event, Sacred Women, on November 5th. And the second is November 19th. It's the Native American Reach Festival. And we are calling in agencies from across the city of Dayton and all the areas of advocacy, education, and culture, and ceremony, healing, and human rights. So in this phase, in this part of the program, I would like to welcome Kathy Arnett.
Well, thank you. I hope I stand up to all those wonderful words. From a young age, really around the time I was trying to decide what I was going to do with my life as a career, I got a calling to be a protector of the earth. It was pretty loud and specific that this is what I needed to do in my life. And for those almost 40 years, I have dedicated myself to water protection. And that protection is anywhere from finding new sources of drinking water to cleaning up remediation that has occurred either by causes in industrial releases or in improper mining, but things that have harmed our water. And this has been happening here locally. As Stephanie mentioned, I've been dedicated to working in the city of Dayton and protecting the water here all of my career. And I've also done this across this country and internationally. Everywhere we have the same challenges. It doesn't matter what your background is, we all need water to survive. I believe water is life and that it connects us all, and that the protection of this great gift is our duty. For a clean, available water is important to all living things. It was important to the first person that stood on the earth. It'll be important to the last person as we leave this earth. we all need it, and it all needs to be available to us. It doesn't matter whether you're poor, whether you're rich. We need to all have it, and we need to have it in clean, available amounts. One of the incredible attributes of water that it is a cleanser. It is a cleanser of the air, of the earth, of our human bodies as well. And it's all around us. But the challenge with this very powerful attribute is that it also rinses the air through rainfall. It rinses the earth as it moves through in the rivers and in the ground. And when it does this, it also comes into contact with the contamination that we have put there through our neglect and accidents. And we need to take care of that because now the water has become contaminated and we need to clean it back up. And it takes generations to do so. I was asked earlier how quickly we see those cleanup actions heal the earth, and really you can contaminate it in an instant, but it will take many, many decades before it's better. In some cases with mining, that can be even many hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's important to pay attention and to educate today. And to me, that really gets into why we need to work together to protect the water resources. Though it's essential for leaders in government and industry to take steps to protect and preserve clean water, it is our duty as individuals in our day-to-day actions to also make sure that we're taking care and protecting the water where we can. Each of us has a role to play there. So that's why I'm really very excited about Reach Fest. As in this area, it was mentioned by Jill about the 10,000 years, just thinking about our first water protectors here many, many generations ago, it is now our job to take up that same mantle and help protect our beautiful resources in this area for us, but more importantly for the generations that come beyond and after us. I'm pretty excited about Reach Fest, and so are the people that I've been reaching out to. I've been very honored that the City of Dayton Water Department and Office of Sustainability will be engaged with me on the Reach Fest to talk about water protection and to help educate not only kids, but adults alike. We all could use a little bit. And also the Greater Dayton Partners for the Environment. They will be there too with their educational tools and knowledge to share. So I'm very excited about that. I'm actually excited about one more tomorrow, but I won't mention it quite yet until I have that. But I'm very honored to be here. I've been blessed to have Stephanie in my life because it was not until well into my adulthood that I learned about my Cherokee descent and my relatives in that area, and it was hidden to me. So I did not get to appreciate that part of my heritage, and I'm getting a chance to embrace it now and continuing to hopefully pay it forward and give back to the community and protect our wonderful resource. So thank you.
So next we have up our land and air protector. Nathan Moses Gonzalez is the CEO of M3. He's a citizen of the Colville Confederated Tribes and works from a very young age to protect our resources. Nathan's two primary research interests include research and development of uncrewed aircraft systems and the interpretation and automation of information collected via the Internet of Things. Nathan serves as a consultant for the United States Department of Agriculture and the United Nations on topics related to unmanned aircraft systems of information. Nathan has served as principal investigator on several UAS projects, both domestically and internationally. These topics relate to precision agriculture, remote sensing, wildlife conservation, and invasive species monitoring and eradication. Nathan has overseen the development of several UAS ranging from systems designated to release sterile insects and to support of area-wide integrated pest management, programs to remote sensing of grasshopper populations, and the survey and detection of evasive exotic species entering ports of call. That's a lot. I think I would get through that. But I want to say this. A couple of years ago, I had the privilege of sitting in the first meeting to hear Nathan and the gentleman speak, and M3 was incorporated in Dayton. So our technology, the place of invention, found its way here. Native tribes, water protector, land and air. Please give me a round of applause. Thank you.
Hello everybody, how's it going today? It's a real honor to be here with you guys today. And I left my reservation up in Washington State around 4:45 in the morning on Friday to come out this way. And as I was driving out, just kind of cruising down the country roads, there was a large mule deer with huge antlers on its head. And I always think whenever I see the wildlife out there that it's always like a sign of something to me. Whether I'm coming or going, I tend to see deer. And deer are ubiquitous, but to see a mule deer where it was at, to me was just an important note. And it was very close to the Columbia River, a river that is very important to my tribe and my life. And you can kind of see the opportunity cost that we've all experienced from, benefited from, and have also suffered from in the ways that we've reclaimed land and land use, especially in the West. And so as I drove down from my reservation, which is very close to Canada, over to Portland, Oregon, which is about like 6.5 hours away to fly out this way, I got a chance to really skirt along the Columbia River and just to kind of see some of the consequences of the decisions that we've made as a society, as well as the opportunities that we get to push forward as people who are alive today, and that can make an impact on the world that we live in. So there was this area where my ancestors and other tribes used to fish at, and it is now well underwater. And to see what used to be some very rapid, aggressive river to be tamed in the way that it is nowadays, it kind of speaks to the sadness that I think a lot of Native Americans feel in their lives. The world that we live in as natives is so much about the environments and the lands that we operate and live around. And oftentimes when we look back to our recent past, we just came through a radical era of reclamation that enabled us to live under this air-conditioned space with the lights on that we have today, and not really concern ourselves so much about the power that we have. So in one way, I'm very grateful for that, as I live in a world that is technological. I'm a digital native type person. I've got my laptop in front of me with notes on it. But also, I would go visit my grandmother who just recently passed away, and at her house, I would drive out there. She lived way in the middle of the country. Like there's remote here in Ohio, and then you go to Washington State, and there's remote in places like that. And I drive to her house and open up the door, and she would just be sitting there very content, looking out the window. And I think about how fast-paced our lives are, how much technology is a sole component of the way that we operate. I was at the airport, and I left my cell phone at the checkpoint, and I had like a mini panic attack. How am I going to get my ticket to get on the flight? How am I going to text my business partner, Mike? How am I going to get things done? And then I'll think back on my grandma and her life. And it's not that it's simple. I think in a lot of ways it is just so precise, so beautiful in the ways that she looked at the world and taught me how to be who I am today. My grandfather was the chairman of our tribe. He was the longest standing chairman of our tribe, Caldwell Confederated Tribes. And when he was young, when he met my grandmother, he had a horse that he rode up to visit her on. And he used to actually work in the apple orchards, which is something that we do today with M3. The major difference is that he was working there as an apple picker, and we now define the space around automation and how to bring robotics and drones and machine learning into these sort of growing spaces. And so in one way, I can see my past as somebody who is very close to the earth and where my grandfather met my grandma. In other ways, I see ourselves as pushing the future forward and seeing where these technologies can go, not only to help my tribe and the region that we operate in, but also to help all of us who consume the fruits and vegetables that we support. So just thinking about who I am and where I came from, I think that's just a really important part of me being here today. So we founded M3 here in Dayton, Ohio in 2012 with the mission of repairing the earth by reducing the environmental impact that food production has. Food production is maybe so far away from us in the sense that we go to the grocery store, we pick up an apple, we pick up a pear. We don't really think about where these things come from or what the impact is to the environment. But when you go to these environments, you see the reality of food production, especially on the industrial scale that we operate on here in the United States. And the benefits to us is cheap, ubiquitous produce in comparison to the world. Some of the consequences, though, are that we find natural resources like water and land very much decimated as a result of using some chemicals. So Dayton here sits in the crossroads of the Midwest, and in many senses, all roads lead to here. And I think that's something that was just super awesome about coming to Dayton for the first time back in 2011, just to see how central this community is to the entire Midwest. And it's a leader in technology, whether the technologies are developed by Wright Pat, the incredible schools such as Sinclair that we're at today, or even folks like Mike and I who started a business out of Mike's garage after he just completed time in the Air Force. This community, what we really value about it is that we believe in the values of this community, and I think that this event speaks to that. That there is spaces for us to incorporate and grow as a business, as well as to grow as people in this society. So we came here with the idea that we not only share the values of this community, but we also share the entrepreneurial spirit that we find here in Dayton. And so we built our first drone here in 2012. And when we started, we knew that our drones would have a major impact, but we weren't quite certain where they'd be best used at in agriculture. We know we wanted to focus in that space. We knew that we were developing technologies that can make an impact, but we weren't really certain where those impacts would be felt at. And so after days, weeks, and months of developing this aircraft, we approached the United States Department of Agriculture and offered them a demonstration to show what our tools could do. And what I thought was really interesting is the USDA uses full-size aircraft in a number of their missions, and they immediately saw the impact that the large impact that our small aircraft could have. And so we were invited to demonstrate our aircraft to them at a cotton field in Arizona, and the rest was history after that. We combined our drones with USDA's biological expertise to develop methods to release these sterile insects that were listed in my introduction, and really created the capacity for me to be who I am today. And so Dayton, to me, as a community, is a really important part of the success of our business, as well as the impact that this community can have, not just here in Dayton, Ohio, but moving further and further away to other places, whether it's Washington State or in South Africa. All the places that I have been able to go to as a result of this launching pad have been incredible. And as a Native American, I've always found comfort in the forests, the wilderness and wildlife that we live around. And we live our lives and make our decisions understanding that the choices that we make should benefit future generations. And working with USDA has helped myself and our business grow in ways and developing solutions that help reduce the environmental impact that we see in agriculture. And so today we combine drones with data to make a much more sustainable food future. But we didn't always start with that perspective. Our starting point was really how can we actually meet the earth where it's at and reduce the amount of impact that we bring to it by consuming foods. Some of the major challenges that we face in food production is that by 2050, we're going to need to produce 40% more food here in the United States alone. Looking internationally, it's going to need to be upwards of 70% more food production. That food production will not be accomplished with chemicals. That food production cannot be accomplished with industrial agriculture. We really need to look at a much more cohesive approach that looks at how we can protect the water, how we can protect the natural resources, how we can reduce the pollutions that we find in the atmosphere. And so that's been something that we've really worked hard at. And so, each tribal community has its own unique needs, and the uniqueness of each tribal community can make it daunting to engage with them. Yet, there are many tribal members who focus on creating, community practices that we're finding today, right? Like, we are here because a tribal member decided to put this mission forth and to collect these people here. And advocacy starts not only from tribal governments, but from tribal people themselves. And so, when we started really focusing our efforts up in Washington State to help around my reservation, we also joined this group of folks that were really interested in protecting the airshed. The air that we breathe, especially in the Western United States in the summertime, it can be extremely polluted because of forest fire smoke. And so while we see that pollution as a big emphasis of our summers, the wintertime has even worse air quality because a lot of our tribal members cannot afford to upgrade their heating systems. And so in their houses, they're burning wood, and the pollution inside their houses is really, really quite terrible. So we live in the West under extreme threat of air pollution, whether it's forest fire driven or even just the economic realities of being in a rural community where we cannot afford to upgrade some of our energy systems. So members of my tribe established this group that we call the Okanagan River Airshed Partnership to coordinate action around clean air events on our reservation and off reservation. And over the course of that time, we started to work very closely with the Environmental Protection Agency. And in 2019, our group received the Clean Air Excellence Award in Washington, D.C. As a result of our advocacy. And we felt that as a consulting group, as an agriculture group, we felt it was really important not only to impact the growers that we work with, but also to engage with tribal communities to help them move forward technologically at their own pace, with their own sovereignty in mind. Not forcing them to adopt the tools that maybe they didn't want to work with, but actually bringing them into the conversation and helping them work with us to understand how better to serve our communities that we live around.
I just want to say what a wonderful program this has been. Most programs like this make the attempt to teach each other about our respective cultures, and that is absolutely invaluable. But this conference goes a little farther. It teaches us to get to know each other a bit. And when I hear the speakers, when I hear about Stephanie's frustrations, when her son was attending Stebbins High School and how she fought to really to achieve recognition for her culture. For the first time, I can say that although I've known Stephanie for 6, maybe 8 months at this time, I feel I'm I finally am getting to know you. And that's so important. And whatever direction this event and Reach takes from this time forward, I hope it will always advance opportunities where we can mutually share our experiences. Because truly, after hearing these speakers, we are one as a peoples, and we can never forget that. Now, I am here to define a term that is often used somewhat frivolously, and that term is greatness. It's easy to be great and recognized as such on a prearranged, preset stage. If you can hit home runs, you're going to be one of the greatest on the baseball stage. If you have a good singing voice, if fortune smiles on you, you can achieve what people recognize as greatness and entertainment, or by achieving high political office, or by doing one thing or another. But I submit there is another definition of greatness that just isn't always recognized. I believe the definition of greatness should be bestowed upon persons or organizations, but I'm speaking of persons today, who take a position based on core beliefs to advocate for individuals or a group of individuals who are often greeted when they attempt to do so by apathy or lack of concern. Greatness is what inspires these people, these men, these women, to keep on with their advocacy, with their efforts to address people who unfortunately have not yet achieved a place at the table where community decisions are made, or have not yet achieved a place where they are recognized as an absolutely indispensable part of a given community. This person that I am about to introduce, whose name I am not yet at liberty to reveal, is a great person. This individual is Lakota elder, a member of the Standing Rock Sioux Nation. He has been a prominent voice for the Native American community in Ohio and beyond. He was part of the core committee to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day in Cincinnati. He's one of the founders of the Miami Valley Council for Native Americans here in Dayton, Ohio, and he has served as an advisor for the Cincinnati Museum of Natural History, the Minority Arts Task Force of the Ohio Arts Council, the Greater Dayton Christian Race Relations Task Force, and the Bias Review Council of the Ohio Department of Education. Disturbed when he moved to Dayton 40 years ago of the condition of the Little Miami River, he became a conservationist and an advocate for our waterways. He's a founding member and president of the Miami Valley Council for Native Americans. I would like to introduce a man who fits my, and I hope your, definition of greatness, Mr. Guy Jones.
I don't know about that greatness part. You know, one of the things is that when I first talked with Stephanie, and she said, "What do you think?" I said, "Don't tell me you talked with me." She said, "Why is that?" Do you see, ever since my arrival here, I've met with people like Mayor Clay Dixon, Paul Leonard, Mike Turner, Brian McClin, you know, individuals that are in places of power to try to get recognition for Native people and those contributions to the greater goodness of all. In 1989, we formed the Miami Valley Council for Native Americans. And there's something really important that I always stress to people. For Native Americans. You see, all of us, we live here. We need to begin to listen to one another. The Indigenous community had a story. And that story needed to be heard. There was a reasoning why I stayed. Because you see, I was trying to understand America's hatred and ignorance. And when I came to Dayton, I seen something. I saw Dayton as the beacon of that mentality. The rivers, not only did they greatly contribute to one of the finest aquifers, but it also created one of the biggest social dilemmas in this country, and that is that it divided people. It divided communities, it divided people. We now know that as redlining. Not only did it divide people by the complexion of their skin, but it also divided people by their class. That's something that so many of us today, we never have those conversations related to class. And we deal with those. You know, I can sit back and I remember things. This morning I got a phone call. A man that I've known for a long time. Somebody who stood with me on a number of occasions. A man that has been there. And he passed, he walked on this morning. But I remembered him because, you know, when he came to me, we started working together. He was this man of compassion and drive. And we would spend time talking and visiting. And I heard his story. And one of the things is that, you see, I encouraged him to do his DNA, do his genealogy. He found that he had Native ancestry. He said, you know, he said, the one part, he said, even my family tells me that I need to be quiet. Because not only did he find out that he was Native, he also found out that he was African American as well. And that really affected him because suddenly people begin to isolate him. Oh, it was cool to be Indian. Oh my God, you can't be black. And he had a time understanding that. So we began these conversations. And eventually in time, he came to grips with it. And those are the stories. Somebody asked me one day, how many natives are in Dayton, Montgomery County? There's about 1,500 that I know of. That's not a lot of people. You see, so many of them look just like you. But you know, so many of us were taught about to have a certain mentality. Because you see, when I told Stephanie that, don't tell him that you talked with me, she also wanted to know why. Because you see, I look that part of what America knows as that savage noble, that noble savage. I'm that warrior. I'm that one who stole white women and killed white men. That wasn't the case. My grandfather is Pezzi, who led the charge against General George Armstrong Custer, the Little Bighorn. That's my grandfather. That's my history. And you know, and I carry that. Because you see, there was something that happened during that time because there was a split between Sidwell and my grandfather, Pezzi. As they went to Canada, they saw the effects, and it was Pezzi who came back to the homeland because he realized the importance of the connection to land and what land can teach us. He wanted to come back. And when he did come back, he started a school called the St. Elizabeth Indian Mission School. And everybody was like, oh, he's encouraging assimilation. No. Because you see, there's something that even my father and my mother taught me. They said, do you know why we send you to school? And I said, well, to read and write, do math. They said, no, we send you to school so you can understand how white people think. And that was something that was stuck with me. I was talking to a young lady over here when we first came in. We were talking about the etymology of words, the origins of those words, and what they mean, and how they impact. I have 19 dictionaries on my bookcase. Because you see, language changes and what it means. One of the hardest things that I've ever had to come to grasp with when I came to Dayton was to grasp this ideal and to find out who the hell were briars. And where did that come from? And what did it mean? And the significance of that. And you see the results of that even today. Take a walk in East Dayton, because you see, this society, this community, still looks at them that same way. Well, they stopped calling them briars, but they still look at it that way. I moved to Jefferson Township, and those conversations. But I was fortunate because I got to meet some individuals, people like Jesse Goody, Raleigh Trammell, Reverend Cunningham, to sit and talk with them. Because you see, back then we didn't have conversations about black and white. We had conversations about humanity. Those conversations are what I really gravitated to. There's a we. Because you see, the Miami Valley Council for Native Americans, when I went up to Triangle Park, and they were going to build a football field, and I told them, y'all can't do that. They're like, why not? And I said, this is sacred ground. I said, there's burials here. And I explained it to them, and I told them just where everything was at. They said, how do you know this? And I said, because I got the maps. And then word got out about it. The media got involved. Suddenly the mayor was on television saying that I blindsided them. I said, I didn't blindside you. You see these maps that I had? They were city maps. They were the cities. They weren't mine. They knew there was burials there, but yet they went ahead because the NFL promised them $1 million. I raised the question of morality. That's all I did. Well, I could probably stand up here and talk to you all weeks of my experiences here in Dayton and what has happened. Some of them are pretty interesting. But I tell you, the one thing that I've always advocated for is people. You see, I've never really liked certain terminology. Words like warrior, I don't like that. I don't even like the word Indian. That's one of the most violent acts in this country, is to refer to the indigenous people as Indians. That's not us. People always say, well, who are you? And I said, my mom and dad named me Guy Jones. That's who I am. I honor my mother and my father, what they taught me, and the traditions of which they gave to me and bestowed in me. And those traditions that I have and that I respect, I'll listen to people. There's a number of people. I remember when this young lady came to me right here on. I listened to her story. I listened to her mom. I never once doubted it. That was her word. Even Stephanie. I asked her, I said, are you enrolled? And immediately she said, you want me to show you my card, my paperwork? And I said, no. I said, you gave me your word. That's all that matters. That's your word. You see, that's who you are. So, Mayor members, I appreciate this immensely. Like I said, it's been a long time advocating for Native people, Indigenous people to get recognized in this community. And I thank you. Thank all of you for being here today.
The next lady that I asked to join us is Adonica Black. We've heard about the legacy work of advocacy, but I wanted to showcase how you can begin in your institutions, how you can begin, how you have a voice. And I had the pleasure of seeing, hearing, and experiencing Dawn over video conference, and her camera wasn't on. But I've spoken to her about what we were trying to do and the whole realm of reach. And the gentleman that we were speaking, advocacy work, and she said, I'll be there. I will be there. And she showed up and flew in. Adonica is the Director of Global Talent Development and Inclusion for LexisNexis Legal and Professional. And LexisNexis is one of the largest employers in this area. And they are always in our community. They're always working with communities, but right now, there is no Native American Heritage, ERG. And a very good friend of mine who has helped organize all of this with us in registration is Liz Connect, and Liz works at LexisNexis. She's an event planner, and she is a powerhouse of helping me, helping our friends find a way, make a way. So in all of this, and so she's sharing, telling my story, sharing and telling my story. And she's like, I think you need to tell your story. So anyway, I want Adonica to step up. Adonica, you can come up and better tell you how you can help your employees. If you have agencies and corporations, she's going to touch on that, how you can better serve your people of color in your community and starting programs. Adonica Black, thank you.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Like Stephanie said, my name is Adonica Black. I am very honored to be here in this sacred space. I feel like I have a lot of responsibility following what we just heard on behalf of what needs to happen, which is truth. So I want to share a bit about my role in the organization. As Stephanie said, I'm the Director of Global Talent Development and Inclusion with LexisNexis Legal and Professional. We are a large employer in the area. It's a global organization of over 10,000 employees worldwide. And in my role, my charge is to partner with our community to build our culture of inclusion and to make sure that we are truly getting the best out of our 10,000 plus community. And in this effort, like Stephanie said, Liz Connect, who's from the Dayton area, reached out to me and informed me of the journey that the Indigenous community has been on, particularly in this community, to have Indigenous Peoples Day being recognized, and what an honor it is to be a part of this inaugural celebration. And so when Liz told me about Stephanie, and then I got a chance to meet with Stephanie, like she said, I raised my hand to say, I want to be here, and that really is my role, is to give voices and give a platform to people who need to tell their own truths, to share their own stories. And as an organization, we truly believe that creating that culture of inclusion will create the best of your organization. And so in that, we are really focused on a few things. Equity, inclusion, psychological safety. Those are, concepts that we've heard more frequently in the last few years, buzzwords, but they mean something and action needs to be put behind them. So organizations, I encourage all of you all to think about how you can tap into the resources you have, into the frameworks that you have, and bring voices to the table that can tell their own stories and tell their own truths, because that's how you end up building a better culture that you'll see will advance all of your objectives as a whole. When speaking with Stephanie, she shared her story with me and some of my colleagues, and we started getting into a conversation about kind of healing and how healing needs to occur. So when you think about a wound, you can't just cover it up and expect it to heal without first cleaning it out, airing it out, and sharing and kind of healing from within, right? So when I think about what we're doing here today, and we're thinking about kind of what needs to happen moving forward, there's a catharsis that needs to happen, a truth that needs to be told. And people need to understand and hear these stories and give platform to those stories from the people who've lived them and have learned of them themselves. That's when healing can then happen. And I think as organizations, we should be very confident in providing those platforms for that healing, because it can only get better. We can't go backwards, right? We've passed some of the roughest times in our history, and we want to improve. So that means we have to be truth tellers and allow that to happen by creating that opportunity for healing. In preparing for this honor to speak, Stephanie also educated me about the human rights issues that is facing the Indigenous community, and particularly how this has affected the women in the community, and some of the human trafficking issues that the community has also faced. These are ills that the community has faced in the past and still toils with today. And in particular, we discussed the removal or even the taking of women from the community. And we really bonded over the understanding that women are medicine to their community. This is a universal truth. This is something that's been acknowledged by the United Nations when they state gender equality is not only a basic human right, but its achievement has enormous socioeconomic ramifications. Empowering women fuels thriving communities, economies, spurring productivity and growth. Yet gender inequities and inequalities remain deeply entrenched in every society. These inequalities include an imbalance in security and safety of women in this community, as Stephanie has informed me. So when women are missing or taken, the community continues to fail. So we are committed to advancing human rights, resources, and support for Indigenous communities. And as an organization, we are committed to helping to ensure that the voices that need to be at the table are heard to make the community whole and to restore balance. So I just thank you for allowing me to be a part of your celebration and for your time today. Thanks.
One of the pillars of our strategic plan is equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we are growing our services in support of historically marginalized communities. As a public library, we of course are free to everyone, and everyone is free to belong at the Dayton Metro Library, but we haven't provided the same level of services or collections to some of the populations that are here in Montgomery County. So we want to be aware of that and be more thoughtful as we are implementing new programs. What I'd like is to encourage the community to hold us accountable, to be more thoughtful in the collections and resources and programs that we are acquiring and putting forward. And I would encourage the community to let us know when we're doing well, but also let us know when we're not doing so well. We want to be more than an ally. We want to be an accomplice. So please, tell us what you need and tell us what your hopes are, and we'll work together to make them come true.
I'm here to really support the first or the inaugural Indigenous Peoples Day here for Dayton, Ohio. The organizer, Stephanie Van Hoos, we work with on various human rights issues. I'm at the University of Dayton's Human Rights Center, and I also run Abolition Ohio, which is the anti-trafficking coalition for the Miami Valley. And the issue of Indigenous people or any marginalized group and their protection and fulfillment of their rights is really what brings me here today. It's a major issue across the United States. The fact that Indigenous people, especially Indigenous women and girls, are being murdered, are disappearing, are being exploited and abused at an incredibly high rate compared to other groups. And it's going really largely unreported and unrecognized because of, for cultural reasons, for the institutional reasons, the tribal governments versus state governments versus federal government. And I think a lot of it is also for just essentially flat out racism against the indigenous people. And so it's a major issue. It's not happening as far as we know here in Ohio, but it's not being reported. But it is a huge issue across, especially in the western United States and parts of the southeast as well. If you teach students about some of these very important social issues and human rights violations, et cetera, and then you stop there, you haven't really accomplished that much. You've increased maybe their awareness of the issue, but you have to take that next step toward actual advocacy and turning the students, I think, into advocates in a lot of ways, empowering them so that they can learn about issues and then giving them the tools so they know how to take action. For example, when we really got started with this work locally on anti-human trafficking, we took a large group of students to the State House and advocated for the passage of the first criminalized felony statute against human trafficking in the state of Ohio, working closely with state senators and state representatives, and then the governor's office as well. And it's great timing because we're coming sort of full circle again. And the week after the midterm elections, we're taking groups of students and other advocates back to the State House to work on improving some of the statutes that we have for trafficking victims. Well, specifically to improve the process of expunging criminal records for survivors of human trafficking, so that what they were forced to do and had received criminal penalties for, even though they were being compelled, those can be removed from their records more easily. So we'll be getting students there as well. So it's a two-part process. There's the education, but then there's the providing the means for them to actually take action and to advocate for the change they want to see. My main hope for today is we'll begin to raise awareness of all of the issues that are faced by Indigenous people, and the fact that it is an issue here in Ohio, here in Dayton and Montgomery County as well. People might be aware of issues of Indigenous people in the Amazon or out west, when you think of like Arizona and the large Navajo reservations or along those lines, but they don't realize or are aware that this was all native land. And we really have to acknowledge that this was native land. We have to really begin that process of raising awareness so people can understand the deep and rich history and the traditions and cultures of the Native people and how much that informs what we do today and how important it is to, especially the modern environmental movement and issues around sustainability. I mean, the whole idea of protecting current generations and keeping an eye on future generations is at the heart of a lot of Native American philosophies. And it's something that we're just now sort of finally coming around to in the last few decades and the last few years. So it's really critical. So my main hope for today is to really start the process of increasing the awareness and the recognition of all the great contributions that Native Americans have given all of us, and the fact that we're all together and we need to start working out the thorny issues of all of the injustices in the past.
I was asked to come here today to perform Native American flute music and share some songs and some history on the Native American flutes. Yeah, I give a little brief history on the flute and what it was used for amongst the tribes. And then the music itself, it just takes you to another place and another time, and hopefully brings peace to your soul as you listen to it. And it touches a lot of people to be such a simple instrument. I'm an artist as well. I'm a visual artist. I draw and paint. And I was living in Louisiana at the time, outside of New Orleans, and they was having a Native American art exhibit come to the New Orleans Museum of Art. It was called Circles of the World exhibit. And I went there to look at all the beautiful art and take in all the pieces on the culture. And as I was walking through there, they had the Native American flute music playing on the speakers. And I was just like, wow, I love this stuff. And so I walked into the gift shop after I saw the tour of the place, and I walked into the gift shop and they had the music in there. And I went up to the lady and I said, can I beg, borrow, or steal this music you have playing? And she said, well, at the time, this is how long ago, it was just cassettes. And she said, we have cassettes. I said, how many do you have and how much are they? And I got all that they had at the time, which was 3. And I've been hooked on the music ever since. And that was back in the early 90s.
Well, I'm here to help celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. About 10 years ago, I was invited to participate in a Memorial Day celebration honoring Native Americans who had served this country so well in every war this country has ever fought. That lasted maybe 3 or 4 years. Unfortunately, the founder of that event passed away, and this is simply a means of jumpstarting a program to emphasize the many contributions of Native Americans to our culture, to our military, so that those contributions can be celebrated throughout our community. I think the biggest challenge facing this community is that we may well have learned to live and to work and to go to school together. We really do not know each other. And the only way to know each other is to sit down, to have dialogues, to find out our respective life's experiences. If you and I, for an example, were sitting down to try to resolve a community issue, I'd very quickly know where you're coming from because you would tell me. But I wouldn't know why you are coming from that perspective. And unless I know your life's experiences and you know a little bit about mine, then that why will always be a mystery, and we'll never truly get to know each other because our life's experiences shape our perspectives, our actions, and our reactions. So programs such as this, programs such as sponsoring dialogues where persons from different backgrounds can meet and speak, I think will put this community on a path to greatness. I truly believe that.